All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome again, everybody. We have people joining us from all across the country today, so we're excited for our diverse audience. We're going to get started by letting our panelists introduce themselves briefly, so you know who's going to be sharing some information with you today. Seth, can we start with you?
Hello, my name is Steph Culliton. I'm a safety and risk advisor here at Carroll. My area of specialties is OSHA compliance and all the fun stuff that goes along with that.
I'm Cassandra Craig. I'm with Carroll also. I'm the Chief Operating Officer. And my area of expertise is probably, obviously the coverage knowledge and pertaining specifically today around workers' compensation.
Good morning. My name is Laura Mibro. I'm the owner of Aspen HR Consulting. Our area of expertise is human resources, start to finish. I'm on a director to HR manager at HR Consulting, and I have a lot of expertise in how managers get executions. Let's tell our employees.
Okay, well, thank you. So here's how we're going to handle the format of this webinar today. We have a handful of questions and topics that have been submitted. And so we're going to just kind of start from the top and go through them. And again, anyone who's attending, if you have questions about something that's said, just throw a question in. So, all right, first topic. So a lot of people have commented that one of the biggest struggles with work comp is obviously premium cost. And knowing how employers can control those premiums, trying to understand how they're calculated. And so we wanted to address that first. Cassandra, would you be able to take that one for us?
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, I kind of want to go on a broad level, how workers' compensation premiums are calculated. And let's start specifically with the class code. So your class codes are defined by the type of business operation that you have and the different duties within that operation. So for example, you might have your contractor, you might have a clerical class code, you might have a supervisor class code, and then you might have boots on the ground class code. It's important to differentiate those payrolls within your company so that you can get optimize the best pricing possible, because each class code has a different rate. It's state specific on your rates. I know Darren said that we had some people all over the United States. So just understanding that our rate in Arizona, it could be much smaller than a rate in California for the same type of class code. Then you go down to the payroll in each class code. So you would have an exact payroll for your employees, and then if you're an owner, there's minimum payroll that you charge or maximum payroll that you charge. Then goes to your modification experience modification factor, that is today probably the thing I'm talking about. That's the most controllable thing that you have in all of this with workers' compensation, is what your experience modification looks like. Everyone starts at a 1.0. You go up or down from there based on your history and your experiences of claims. And then after that, then there's credits that are given, and the credits actually, the mod will dictate a lot of times how many credits or even debits that you get on an account. So that all of that together then becomes your final premium for your workers' compensation.
Okay, thank you. Let's talk a little bit about fraudulent or potentially fraudulent work comp claims. Often employers are going to worry about those types of claims and the complexities that go along with verifying what type of claims or injuries are legitimate or not. Cassandra, maybe if you could start with that, then we'll let Laura jump in as well.
Well, I think the biggest thing is that, as an employer, you definitely need to have an incident reporting process and procedure, which Laura will actually go into. And that's going to start the ball rolling with a claim, obviously, or an incident, which maybe then essentially will go into a claim. But the fraudulent claims, you really have to, as an employer, have an active interest in your claims that are active in your policy. And you do have to rely on the insurance carrier for their knowledge and understanding of how a claim should be handled, what to notice if there is some fraud going on, whether or not they've hired an independent medical evaluator for the claim itself. And that goes into, which is obviously probably another topic, but having an insurance company that is going to look at the claims in a fashion that is not rushed is very important. So at LeBaron and Carroll, we're very specific with our insurance carriers about, okay, tell us, how many cases does one adjuster handle? How, and based on that, we have a metric for that. And from that, we understand, okay, so this carrier is going to be able to handle claims and look at claims and not just pay it out on a claim quickly. So that goes into kind of your selection of your insurance company as well. But like I said, that's probably another topic, but I wanted to just mention that as well.
Thank you. From the human resources standpoint, it's important that every incident is documented the same every single time. So having process and procedure in place where you do have forms, you do have templates, and most importantly, the managers who are on site, if you aren't there, everybody is trained in how to complete the incident report and what to do. Time is of the essence. We all know that sometimes people forget, but there is a time frame in which the employer must submit that claim for workers' compensation. Trusting your broker, having that relationship, really relying on the experts throughout that process is key to making sure that everything is handled correctly and we don't have fudge. Oftentimes, employers don't want to talk to the employees once an incident has happened. They're afraid, they don't know what to do, and sometimes that can lead to too much time in between. Now we have to document it, and you say, we don't have all our process and procedure taking place, and that can open the door for things getting mishandled or for people continuing to work for stuff who really shouldn't be on first. I'd say communication is a big piece of that. If you have somebody out on any type of leave, especially a workers' comp leave, staying in communication with that person, understanding what's happening on their side of things, and also understanding what's happening on the business side of things is important. So that also helps you to see my rate, that's a little bit of the right side. And if you see that, making sure that you're talking to your insurance provider so they can collect their information and do what they need.
Yeah, I think that's super important. That the dialogue with the intern employee and the employer, it doesn't go away when the injury happens and the adjuster is now involved. I mean, there's the constant communication. It's definitely, and then letting the insurance carrier know.
So let me throw a what if at the group here, and anyone can comment on this. You have an employee that shows up on a job site on a Monday morning. Within the first hour, he's complaining about a back injury, and supervisor was pretty darn sure he was, doing something stupid over the weekend, and now he wants to get paid out on it. How do you deal with that?
Would you like to keep that one? It's one of our hot topics that comes up quite a bit. So, first thing is you're going to come up simply straight out, like with that, that hits report. Taking that information, maybe your spidey sense of tingling and you something called whatever, you're thinking into that, what's the matter, or I know that this happened, or so told me what they were doing this weekend, skiing, and now he's come to work and he has that injury. You can keep that in mind, but still, feel free to ask some questions about that. But you still not follow the procedure because maybe there was actually an incident that you don't mix that up in that process. You still need to do your due diligence to like the piece there. From a company, I definitely make sure, or talking to your insurance provider, outreach to explain it. Hesitancies that he had during that process because they need to know, and that you need to explore it process. But we would still want to follow the same procedures we would do with anybody that's screening stage.
Okay. Thank you. So next question. I want to talk about compliance requirements, laws. This is a big issue. A lot of employers are a little fearful of what they don't know sometimes. And so, Seth, can you talk about some of the compliance issues and things that everyone needs to know?
Yeah. So I'm going to start just with some basics. Your labor posters. You want to make sure you have your labor posters up in a conspicuous place in your business where everybody can see those. They're easy for everyone to access. The next thing is going to be your reporting requirements. So when you do have an accident, you do have some obligations to report and record certain types of injuries. For example, in Arizona, if you have a recordable injury, meaning an injury that it's beyond first aid, you're going to fill out the ICA form, the Industrial Commission form. It's called the Employer's Report of Injury form. It goes sent directly to them. The nice thing is you take that same form, you're going to send it to your work comp carrier. That all has to be done within 10 days. Federally, you're going to fill out the OSHA 301 form. That should be done within 7 days. And then if you have a severe injury in Arizona, meaning amputation, loss of an eye, or an inpatient hospitalization, or hopefully not, but a death, you have to report that directly to ADOSH. So ADOSH in Arizona, the Arizona Department of Occupational Safety and Health, they are underneath the ICA. And so they handle all of these severe injury reporting, death investigations. With those types of injuries, you have to let them know within 24 hours. There's a separate form on the ADOSH website for that as well. Then at the end of the year, you also have to do some federal recording. So you're going to take all of your injuries, all of your reportable injuries. They're going to go on the 300-page summary form. And then that form, it is directly submitted to OSHA once you got more than 20 employees in your business. And it should be posted in a conspicuous place in your business from February 1st to April 30th of every year. So those are just some of the basic compliance requirements. But I would start with the labor law posters, and then from there, nothing has to go into action until you actually have an accident.
Seth, can you just briefly cover what is the baseline for an injury that has to be reported?
Yeah, so if an injury is considered first aid only if you can take care of it out in the field or in the office with a simple first aid kit. As soon as you need a licensed healthcare professional's intervention or certain other exceptions, like if I've given a prescription, then it becomes an automatically reportable. So it's very important that you choose where your employees go to get seen and evaluated as well. I always recommend sending them to an industrial medicine facility rather than something like a Concentra or around the border. Concentra's business model is set very much on writing lots of prescriptions, lots of follow-up appointments for physical therapy and things like that. Whereas an industrial medicine facility has more of a relationship with the employers, and they're looking to get that person back to work as soon as possible. And that's where you kind of sit in with the trouble work.
Seth, could you let us know, what resource would someone go to know if they're required to do the OSHA law, or only certain industries are required?
Right. So you are required to do the OSHA log once you have more than 10 employees. There are certain people in certain industries that are exempt from what we call program inspections, meaning where the OSHA inspector would come out to your business. So there are resources on the OSHA website, osha.gov. You can look up if you are in what's called a low-risk industry. And then you can also reach out to us, kind of give you some guidance as well. And then we can help you get copies of those forms and direct you to where to submit those forms as well. Yep.
So we've got a couple questions come in. One of them is about this topic, Seth. We have a client specifically in the pest control industry, and he is asking if they're expected to report injuries to OSHA being in the pest control industry specifically.
I would say yes, because I don't think it's identified as one of the low-risk industries. Because you're handling pesticides, you tend to be at a little bit higher risk. Also because you are doing a lot of driving, you tend to be at a little bit higher risk. So once you have more than 10 employees, you are required just to keep record of those injuries, and then you don't have to submit them to federal OSHA, so you have more like.
Okay. Cassandra, we got a question come in about one of your comments on EMODs. Someone asked, is there anything they can do to lower their EMOD? They have been in business 18 years, 0 claims. EMOD is at 0.96. He feels like they've only moved the needle 4%. He's wondering why it can't move more.
Sure. So what happens, and that's a little bit frustrating, I know, as an employer. So NCCI, which is who sets in Arizona, who sets the mods and calculates the mods, you can only get to a certain, there's a minimum mod that you can get to. And if you have a certain amount of payroll, there's a lot of actuarial that goes into it. So if you have 0 claims and your mod is not moving the needle much, my first inclination is that the industry that you're in, the minimum mod is not much past that, because it'll be based on payroll and your claims. And if you want then that's probably what's happening to you, is that you're not going to probably get much lower than that. And I would, if you are a client, if you're a client of Liberty Fair, I would encourage you to reach out to myself or to your agent, and we can tell you very easily what the minimum mod is going to be for you. And then you'll know. You're going to know that, okay, I'm doing everything I can, and this is as low as I can go, knowing that it can always get much higher than 1. And so you want to keep doing what you're doing.
Okay, great. Next question is, we want to talk about the impact of claims on premiums. We all know that minor claims can still cost a lot, but I know there's a lot more to that. So, Cassandra, could you dive into that and maybe discuss the medical versus indemnity issue?
Yeah. So on your workers' compensation, there is a part of work comp that pays out that's medical only. And then there's a part that is indemnity, which is lost wages. So as an employer, you want to take an active approach. And again, it goes back to what Seth said with the return to work program. You want to take an active approach to making sure that your claims are medical only. And let me explain to you why. On your experience modification, a medical only claim is not going to, it's going to be 1/3 of the cost of an indemnity claim. So you're going to pay 3 times over the course of 3 years. You're going to pay 3 times more on the indemnity, meaning if you pay for lost wages for someone, you're going to pay 3 times more premium than if you just had a medical only claim. So it's important to remember that keeping those confined to medical only, getting them back to work as soon as possible, takes away that 3 times factor, right? So in medical only claims is just what it says. There cannot be any lost wages. It has to be strictly medical.
Okay, great. So you mentioned return to work programs. You want to maybe dive into that just a little bit. The comment we've had is that there's often some frustration in managing return to work programs effectively. And so I thought maybe, Seth, if you can start and briefly just describe what a return to work program is so everybody knows, and then we'll let Laura and Maren talk about the legalities that go in there.
Yeah, so a return to work program is getting that person back to work as soon as possible within the restrictions from their provider. So if I fall off the ladder and I break my arm, do I have a 1-hour job that I can do at my place of business? So it would be, we want to make sure this person is in a home where they feel like, Cassandra forgot about me. They don't care about me. I also feel disconnected from my coworkers. People that stay at home tend to have a longer recovery. They tend to stay at home watching Lerner and Rowe commercials and things like that. And so what we want is that person back to work. We want them among their peers. We want them earning their normal wages, and we want them to contribute to the company as well. So you may have to be a little bit creative with their job. So if it's something that contribute to the company, that's great. You can also get creative and have people go volunteer. You can pay them to go volunteer places. You can have them assist with filing. You can have them be the person that goes around and does surveys or does phone calls. So it really just matters about getting them back to a place where they can be cleared back to full duty, but they're doing the job that contributes to the company within those work restrictions until the doctor says they are put back to full work.
So on the human resources side, it's to protect the business, again, it's all about documentation. So what we would want to encourage is documenting a return to work program, making sure that your managers are aware of what this can look like. When you are offering a light duty position or another position that the employee can do during this time, we want to make sure that's documented as well. Seth and I were talking the other day about how important the offer letter in this situation can be. So if we have this light duty position, we recommend moving forward with an offer letter, and it's said so perfectly, let's send that to the employee certified mail. And that's an HR best practice. Anytime we do need to send something formal to the employee in any situation like that, whether it's this or, make a termination if we have certified mail. FedEx in court is not certified mail. Make sure it's certified mail with that return piece of mail that comes back to you, whatever that thing's called. Documentation. When we do offer this position to them and they don't want to take it, then there's other things that we can do. And most importantly, it goes back to your HR setup as it is within your organization. Make sure that you have a handbook. Make sure you have an attendance policy. Make sure that you have written policies about when an employee should call in before the start of the workday if they're not going to be here. Because if we offer them this position and they accept it and now they're not returning to work, we can't hold them to those policies. Absolutely. And, you may also be in a situation for which we're experiencing some of the workers' comp side of things that the employees they come back to work, the employees communicate to us that they are not ready to go back to work due to the injuries still happening. Some of that is just that we over communicate exactly, like that's not the reason. So you need to go back to the doctor. You need to provide us with the evidence that they were still out. It's not so that they need to ask or request for additional tech leave. But again, that's a different process that can operate outside of the workers' process. They got to come back and they have the back as far as all paperwork and the documents and all that. And that becomes a performance or behavior issue, but again, keep outside of the process. And I should also add that if that injury also was part of a performance or behavior situation, or they were already have their wing of performance or behavior or attendance or whatever situation, those situations don't necessarily have to stop. So part of the return to work could also be a non-return work prematurity employee as a situation that's already happening, the decision to terminate is already happening when they got to an injury position. You definitely want to be careful to make sure you cross your T's and dot your I's and make sure that everybody's on board. But that process does necessarily need to stop in order for the workers' comp to be happening. So that's kind of an important piece to remember that just because one process is happening doesn't mean you have to totally stop that thing, especially in an employee that was also others dangerous situation. And even if once they accept that offer, it's important to know that if you have an attendance policy in place, you can't, you can do other things like a no call, no show, whatever your situation, whatever your handbook says, you can apply that to the light duty. It doesn't, the injured worker, it's important to remember that the injured worker isn't safer, right? They are still subject to your policies. From a policy standpoint, I'm not sure how many different industries are applied, but I did hear pest control. When you have people who are behind the wheel or out in the fields, there are all sorts of policies that you could put in place, like a safety policy, a driving policy, a cellular device policy, a stop work authority, which has come in handy. We had a situation, a client of ours had 4 people out on the job site. The driver got in the truck, 2 other people got in the truck, and one got in the back of the truck. And driver thought it would be funny. He said, "Wait, the truck around." Guy in the back falls off, breaks his collarbone, and ruins $25,000 for equipment. So, long story short, driver terminated. The person who was injured violated a seatbelt policy and a safety policy. He got a final written warning. and broke his shoulder on top of it. The two folks who just got in the truck, you should have seen the look on their face when I said, you're being written up for violating a safety policy. And they said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, that's exactly it. You didn't do anything. There's a stop work authority that you signed here that every person on your job site, every person in this organization has the authority to stop work if it's violating a safety policy. So they also received a final written warning. So we can continue managing to the processes and our policies as long as we have them in place. So very important to take that time to make sure that you've got all your policies in place. But also make sure that if you are following through the policy and pick up a separation of an employee, that you give it back to your workers' comp team because they need to know that that is a situation package. Just make sure, again, communication, documentation. That's a big care of us.
So we've had a couple questions. One was about when can an employee be terminated who's involved in a work comp process. I feel like we've addressed that. Another question was about documentation. That's been mentioned a lot.
Yes.
What are the core documents that have to be in place? What would you recommend?
So I'll let you answer to the workers' comp side, things like you're on the nipple answer on the HR performance side.
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, you do have some federal and some state forms. If you are in a state that has a state-run program, you will have additional ones. I know there's some like Nevada has one. I think Utah has one. So you have your state-run form that you have to fill out. Some of them have to be submitted. You have the OSHA 301 form, and then you should have an internal form. You really want to investigate and document all your accidents, because the reason for that is you want to take a look. You want some kind of nugget of wisdom that prevents this from reoccurring again. And once you kind of gain that knowledge, you can communicate it to all your other employees. But you want something internally where have the employee write what happened right away. Have the supervisor write, were there any witnesses? And you want to go into the root cause analysis of that to see if there are any contributing factors that are within our control to make sure this doesn't.
And I think, one thing that a lot of people forget, the people that were there, also just having the accounts of the other workers that saw the incident happen. Sometimes employers forget to remind them to do that. So just please remember to do that, because that can become instrumental in settling claims and such, and what happened and all that.
And then on the human resources side, that can become instrumental in performance management as well, and risk mitigation going forward. So internally, your internal forms, they should be consistent across the board. All your forms should have your logo on it. Make sure that the managers are trained. You even have a checklist for managers that go with that form, but every single incident needs to have the same exact form and same exact process every single time. I would say the documenting who has attended that training is equally as important as the instructions and the consistency of the forms that are included. And again, documentation, you would want to make sure that all that documentation is housed in the same place, the same way, in the same manner for every single employee, every single incident. We don't want papers flying around that have a sort of medical information on there, or release from your doctor sitting on your desk. We want to make sure that's completely secure and only available to the people who need to be dealing with that. And Ms. Newton?
Well, I'd just add on top of that we're asking to communicate with your employees, not to document those communications. Well, like it's over the phone, sending them a quick email afterwards, like, hey, thanks for jumping on the phone. We talked about X, Y, and Z. See back to work on this date. Whatever. Confirming it in writing to them having file is much easier than having to ask, hey, manager, what did you fill that version of 4 weeks ago? So like you say, it just works out so much better. And then also asking the employee to confirm receipt of things works really well too. Distributing LOX and lead got this. And making sure that you're storing that all of it wherever you're storing either your investigation report or in the employee's file themselves.
And I want to touch on what Laura said. It's very important for the documentation on who attended what training, because then that way, to the point of that is when you go through the processes of the performance, then you can say they can say, I didn't go to that training, and you can say, oh no, yes you did, and here's the day you did it. If you don't have that, kind of record keeping, you can't say that, and then you can't go on to the performance, management.
Yes, performance management. Yes, and even to add on to that, it may be a situation we've got this come up before. Why is everybody getting hurt? Reports to John Doe over here. John Doe has attended this training. Now, guess who we get to manage through the performance management process? The manager, who is clearly not doing what he needs to do with his team. So again, training, communication, document who's there, have your checklist, consistent documentation formats, and we can do all we can do to help mitigate our risk.
So another side question here. Are there certain policies within the employee handbook or safety handbook of each company that are just essential? Well, what are some of the core policies that just every employer needs to have in place?
I would say, especially given that we have people work, I think I would start first of all with drug and alcohol policy for sure, driving policy, safety policies. I love the stop work authority. That's one of my absolute favorites. But from your handbook, we should have some of the essential things are, you can go through like harassment and bullying, but the anti-retaliation policy within your handbook that clearly shows the employee that if you go and report something, like say another employee needs to report, and instead that happened, that the company is assuring you that we are not going to retaliate against this employee. And then having the process and procedure in handbook on how to report things, whether it's harassment, how to report a safety issue, how to report something, OSHA related, things like that. Having that in the handbook, because now we can hold the employees accountable to that as well. It has to apply to everyone within the organization. So that handbook is really essential because you can hold even your entry level brand new worker accountable if they're not reporting something that they should have reported.
And including timely reporting.
Yes.
Because then if you do have somebody who shows up and telling them something happened, they witnessed it, and it comes probably later on, and that's when they expect up to you, you hold them to that situation as well. And that helps empower people that don't want to give you information about a situation, don't feel comfortable snitching on somebody else that they work with or whatever. Especially in situations where you're working on dangerous chemicals or equipment or driving. I mean, let's keep the employee or knowledge as well. It's extremely important that they understand that failing to report is also an issue.
That's where anonymous reporting is folks should have within the company if there's the ability for somebody to, maybe it's about their supervisor, we're a team supervisor. So if you can do it anonymously, that's a big plus.
Yeah.
So we've had a couple requests for a few things. One was return to work template, which I said we'll send that out along with this recording. Laura, we've also had a request. A couple people have asked about, you just went through this list of policies.
Yes.
And there are people wanting that list.
Wonderful.
Maybe I can work with you afterwards and we'll send that list out as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I did rattle off quite a few policies, but I can't write his stats. Why there's so many?
And then we had a question, a specific question, actually going back to our first topic. Cassandra, I think you covered it was about class codes.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a specific example. There is a client who owns a crane repair company. He feels like he's in the wrong class codes, or let me just read this to you. He says, I need to get a list of class codes from Arizona. I feel I'm in the wrong group. I struggle explaining the true work that I do. People assume we're working 200 feet in the air. We are not. I feel our risk is no worse than a regular mechanic. We need some guidance here. We rarely work over legal DOT travel height of 13.6.
So that particular situation, NCCI, the National Council on Compensation Insurance, is the holy grail for class codes. We don't get to decide those. The underwriter doesn't get to decide those. Claims adjuster doesn't get to decide those. NCCI dictates those. So I would encourage you to have a conversation with your agent, and then you can call collectively to NCCI and have a conversation with them. They'll say, "This is the class code. What state are you in?" That's the first thing they ask, and then this is tell me what you do. This is what class code that your client should be in. So, and that really is where it kind of ends. Like there's not a lot of negotiation that we can do when it comes to class codes. And in that particular situation, the crane repair is going to be the governing class code. So everyone who does anything within that kind of organization that has anything to do with that is going to have to stay in that class code. So really the only people that would be able to be outside of the class code for the crane repair would be like your clerical on-site people inside the office, probably. So if you have, some guys in the warehouse doing parts, there's some things we can do there where it's a separate location or separated. If it's branched off from the repair area, those warehouse guys could be a separate class code. But that's going to be a conversation that you definitely don't want to have with your agent. And then ultimately with NCCI, but understanding that your agent can't decide or your underwriter can't decide what class code you're in.
So that resides situation. Like this is a very specific situation, but you just have a local everyday cyber flow. Is it something where it's helpful to have specific job descriptions for their employees to understand where
Very, very important. Yeah. So job descriptions are super important.
Okay. So go ahead.
Just add to that real quick. The reason why is because then this again is probably another topic, but this will then go into your audit. Everybody has workers' compensation audit. You have job descriptions, and you can say this employee goes under this job code, and this is the job description. That's going to help you get you in the right placement for your workers' compensation audit.
I'd like to add one thing that comes up our way quite a bit. Our clients will get the workers' comp audit in the mail, and they're like, here, we don't know what to do with this. So we start pulling payroll reports. It's imperative that your employees are classified properly in your payroll system. So it is really difficult in March to go back over an entire year and try to figure out employees who aren't here anymore, employees who have been promoted, employees who, or in some cases, nobody's classified whatsoever, especially if you are in an industry where the primary focus of your business is like construction or road or things along those lines. You will have that staff that is not doing that. Your salespeople, your marketing people, your accounting, things like that. It is so helpful throughout the year and in your onboarding process. Make sure that your employees are categorized properly in your payroll system. It will save you headaches down the road when you do have to complete that audit. Just get that audit and it's got to go right back.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So we're going to switch gears to a related topic. All of us know that preventing injuries, of course, is very important. However, implementing safety programs can be difficult, especially in really high-risk industries. And so we want to maybe discuss what are some of the best practices for preventing injuries and reducing claims that everyone should know about. Seth, you want to cover that?
Yeah, I think it starts with as soon as that person gets hired. So she mentioned onboarding or a new hire orientation process. You really want to go through with that person in detail the tasks that they will be doing, what that hazard they're present for each of those tasks, and what they can do to keep themselves safe. And this may require certain procedures like lockout, tagout. They may have to wear a specific PPE for a certain task, but all those expectations need to be trained on and reviewed prior to that person doing that task. So we start with that. That way we can kind of get this person ready to do this job that maybe they've never done, maybe they're not experienced. Another way you can do it is once you're out in the field, if you've ever had what's called a near miss. So these are close calls where maybe something fell off the building and almost hit somebody. Nobody got hurt, nothing got damaged, but could have been really bad. We want to document those and we want to discuss them as a group. We want to share that knowledge with as many people in the company. So this near miss doesn't happen and become an accident. So we really want to be really good about documenting those and running them up the chain of command. So bosses and supervisors are aware of them, and we can discuss them in our safety meetings as well. We also can do things like when we have a minor injury out in the field, have people that are first aid trained so we can take care of those little cuts and things like that. We don't send them to somewhere where now it becomes, oh, we need a prescription for ibuprofen or something like that. Now it's a reportable incident, right? So if we have people that can handle first aid out in the field, that's a big plus. You can just take care of it. Yep, we'll clean it off, make sure it gets bandaged, take a look at it, keep an eye on it. Doesn't have to become a big thing. The other critical thing is when we do have injuries, report them right away so we can get it taken care of. They don't become infected or something like that down the road. And then you want to be proactive, right? You do not want to be reactive in any way. You want to be proactive. You want to stay ahead of identifying hazards. Sometimes you got to go, especially in construction, every day is going to be different. So we recommend doing less job hazard analysis each day to identify what hazards are present today that maybe we didn't deal with yesterday. And that way everybody's on the same page. That's how we're going to stay safe and everybody gets to go home.
I have a super interesting statistic, and I want you, if you could just take a minute to let us soak in. On work comp, 2% of claims are unavoidable. So basically, it's going to happen. You can't be, nothing you would have done or said, or any process you had in place, 2% of the accidents are unavoidable. 10% of them are unsafe conditions. So basically, you have a wet floor, someone slipped on it, that's an unsafe condition. You don't have the shoring or the trenching, that's an unsafe condition. The biggest portion of the work comp claims, 88% of claims are unsafe acts. That means theoretically, 88% of your work comp claims are 100% avoidable. So just take a minute. I mean, it's such an interesting statistic for me. I mean, just take a minute to soak that in. 2% unavoidable, 10% unsafe conditions, but 88% are unsafe acts.
So is it an unsafe act because this person lacks training? Or is it an unsafe act because they know better, but we're not holding them accountable?
Absolutely. It can be a combination of both.
Yeah, combination of both.
But they're avoidable either way.
Absolutely. Yeah, we could either fix it by training this person, or then we have to look at maybe our supervisors. Hey, are they doing their job? Are they writing to let people and documenting those things so that you violate rules and holding people accountable?
Right.
I think that's another big thing is when we do see unsafe conditions or workers choosing to do things in an unsafe manner or against our policies, that we are holding them accountable. Because if SpongeBob over here is doing something unsafe and nobody says anything, but then it doesn't say anything with unsafe, it gets hurt. We can't easily hold him accountable. We have to hold everybody. And he might only know that they go silent. So it's making sure again that we're documenting the same for everybody. We're only in the reading of the same expectations that we're setting. That's hopefully setting those expectations. Absolutely. I think it's important too when we're starting to work day that the leadership management teams, anybody who would be a lead or something like that, everybody's trained to walk around and say good morning to every single person on the team. It's amazing how that's been implemented. And then all of a sudden I get calls about, I have a reasonable suspicion that somebody might not be at their best capacity this morning. And the saying hello is filling inside the silence, but it can turn into a habit where punks just show up at the job site and just get going. And, the Super Bowl might have been the night before and, we're getting our chainsaw out and maybe get some of the same. Right? It happens. Yeah, no, absolutely. It actually sounds like scary. Yeah, that's that 88%. It's 88%.
So, question from an attendee: if an employee has a work comp claim and before they're released, they quit, how does that affect the claim?
I think it probably so workers' compensation has always, it started out and it always will be a form to protect the employee. So you have to understand that there's no time limit on medical. Someone who would come, 20 years later and say, I hurt my finger and it's crooked now, and this is who I was working with, and they can go back and get medical treatment for that, right? So there's no time limit on this. So it's always, work on this pretty much always designed to protect the employee. Then that's why it's still important for the employer to take control of the claims. But to their point, that claim is going to have to be seen through. So it doesn't mean that the understanding the employer still can be actively involved in that claim. They can have, correspondence with the adjuster and all of those things, but the actual claim itself will see its way through regardless of what happens with the employee, with the employers, with the employees, women. Well, yes, and I'm sharing things like they're on our end, and somebody has decided to volunteer terminate. We just want to make sure you're not like you would anybody else. Can't split up payroll that week. But if you are making a decision that they are rehackable and misrehackable, I believe that decision just maybe for anybody else not based on what the doctor that wants, what's their fault, literally behind. And when they need the indemnity, that the lost wages becomes super important. So that at that point, the employer really needs to be actively involved in that thing.
Okay, our last topic has to do with the work comp claim process. We want to just kind of walk through what that process looks like, ideally, so everyone's transparent on that. Laura, could you maybe take that question?
Yes, absolutely. So we always recommend that we have a meeting with our clients and the insurance brokers. We want to understand what is available to us to make the right decisions about what process we're going to follow. So step one is to collaborate and create that process, because as we were talking about earlier, maybe a triage doesn't work for one client, but it does for another. Maybe your industry is a little bit different than this other industry. So we would want to collaborate and create what that process would look like. As far as navigating through the process, it's all about communication. Do not let communication become farther and farther in between. I like to use my calendar as a reminder. So I send those dates, sort of like those goals, those end dates on my calendar. I have a set time that I'm going to be communicating with the employee and follow up. The most beneficial thing that you can do is bring your employee back to work as quickly as possible. Time is always of the essence. The faster that you act, the faster that you communicate, the faster we bring them back to work, the faster we can get through this process. And yes, obviously medical can continue on. However, it makes it a lot easier when they're already back to work and they're being productive. The other thing is when we have seen when employees do come in and they're used to being out in the field, and now they're in the office, well, suddenly they're more vivid, they're engaged, they're ready to go. They need to get back out there. They miss their camaraderie out in the field, or they just do their actual job that they are passionate about doing. So by having them come back to work, having that legacy, making, as long as it helps the organization, we've got a job for it, but it will help us get that back to their regular duties as quickly as possible. Stay proactive, set your calendar reminders. Don't miss any opportunity for communication. Don't put it off. Get them back to work as quickly as possible, and the process, this navigation will be a lot easier.
Great. So I just posed a question on the chat, see if anyone has any additional questions, since we're kind of wrapping things up here. We've had people continue to ask about the document templates and such. So if anyone didn't see that on the chat, we are going to send out a list of all the policies Laura discussed, along with a return to work template and a video link to this webinar. So we'll just give everyone another second here. Is there any other topic that you feel we haven't covered?
One thing I would say is that injuries and accidents, and not just affects your work comp, but it will also affect the morale of your company. It could affect your standing within the community, your reputation. So it's hard to put a price on those things. There's also things that OSHA uses to see how safe and effective your safety program is. They use what's called a yard rate, or your TRIR rate. And those are based on your lower corn acreage. So when OSHA comes out, or when you're going to the bidding process, a lot of times you'll run into GCs or maybe a pre-qualification process where they're asking these questions about your rates. And that becomes even more critically important to make sure that you're keeping these rates low so you can actually land this new business rather than just trying to keep your costs down. And of course, we're talking about people. So they'll go alive and healthy and happy is always a goal.
And to that point of bidding, when your mod is less than the industry average, that less than the 1.0, you're saving that much more on your workers' compensation, which also ultimately reflects in your pricing, right? And your bid pricing. But if your mod is 1.25, you're paying 25% more on your workers' compensation. That also goes into the factor of your pricing. And also, some general contractors will not let you have more than you can't have over a 1.1 mod or 1.25 mod. It kicks you out of even being able to bid it, or the dart, or, it's too high.
But you lose those opportunities.
Locally, City of Phoenix is really tough, and they have quite a few projects. ADOG is another one locally. We have seen clients of ours really pushing to get that number back down. They were at risk of losing contract. Yeah.
Okay, one last question came in from someone who is bilingual. They said, sometime our employees ask me to go with them to their appointments to help them translate if they don't speak English. Am I okay to go with them? And is there anything I should have in place to protect myself, such as something I should have them sign authorizing me to go with them? Anything regarding HIPAA I should have them sign?
I can just speak to your HIPAA for a second. Well, we definitely want to keep medical things secure and confidential, unless you are a doctor or agency that will show them sharing confidential information about somebody's medical. We're not HIPAA covered in most cases, but it's still not best practice to be talking about it, and that could lead to discrimination. There are all kinds of things that around it. HIPAA's not necessarily one that those industries have to worry about. And if you have to worry about, I'm sure we'll undergo some very specific training on that. You can though, there probably is always something better person to take. We definitely would recommend that if there's an aspect that work we cannot safely get ourselves to at the facility, that we provide them transportation of it that's driving or rate on this for taxi or something. If it is specifically for translation purposes, or I ask who morals go with them to those kind of situations, see if they're available. And in a last ditch effort to just make sure that they're getting treatment they need, it could be okay, but I would suggest that there's probably a better person to handle that issue. In these situations too, we are, again, feeding back to your payroll system and onboarding, make sure that we have emergency contacts in your system and that they are updated, that you're reminding your employees to log in to make sure that that information is right. I would also say in most cases, medical systems are set up to have either a phone triage later kind of system or some beyond stats that it's to depending on where you live, obviously, in Phoenix, you're not home, so always has to speak Spanish at that.
And the thing that an employer needs to remember, and specific to this, the part of the medical history that pertains to the claim is open to the employer. But the minute that they talk about anything outside of that, it's not open access for the employer anymore. So what I'd say to that person that is there, they're hearing things that aren't probably just about that claim. So it opens them up. I see right where I wouldn't want the exposure to the privacy. It's just like Mark was saying, that it could open the door to risk of discrimination or, sharing private information. I would not want that liability. I would look for another solution before I went as a translator.
And definitely have all your forms in English and Spanish as well.
Yeah. So yes.
But
Okay, well, we've had lots of expressions of gratitude for this. Been very helpful, it seems. And so with that, I think we're done for today. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.